Welcome to Cryptic Accounts, a podcast by paranoid people for paranoid people. And this week on the show, we're covering Freemasonry and Albert Pike. I'm Patrick Ryan, joined by Dennis Cheney. Hi, Dennis.
Good morrow to you, Patrick.
How are you doing, sir?
Oh, it's a beautiful week. It's
Yeah.
rain. Yeah, I'm super pumped for these Freemasons.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So how are you doing?
Doing well, just enjoying another week, another UFO story in the news.
Yes, sir.
Again on the national stage with NBC Nightly News showing not intentionally, they catch a UFO on camera during a story about the Navajo Indians.
Yeah, you showed me at this point, that'd be like the biggest UFO story of the week any other year. And this week, it's like, yep, they're here.
Yep. So yeah, they were doing an expose on Arizona's Navajo Nation and how they're fighting the pandemic. And yeah, you just see it's a shot of like a native woman like outside, and then you just see this thing like that looks like very similar to the Nimitz encounters footage, a tic tac shaped object comes shooting out of some clouds and just flies through the air. There's
you can always
anything else other than that.
No, it's totally a tic tac. Totally. And you can always tell. I feel like you can tell the way do you feel like they fly like so smooth? You know what I mean? They kind of have this jerking to them.
It was pretty smooth.
No, I know, but I'm saying like they fly different than a plane, which is like a straight line. Like they seem to have this like inertia to them, like Mario does. You know what I mean? When you're playing Mario and he kind of has this like, he kind of slides on the ground a little bit. Like
yeah, it never looks real. It doesn't look like it has any resistance to what it's doing. Also, it never looks like it's really being propelled by anything.
Right, yeah. It looks like it's like a Mario or something. Yeah, it is definitely a UFO.
So that was interesting. I mean, at this point, we don't even, it's not even conspiracy that we could just kind of come out and say, yeah, another UFO, you guys.
Saw another UFO.
Here's what we know.
We're like 5 months out from learning what the military knows, supposedly.
Yeah, unless just something pops out before then, and that was just them prepping for us. Like, well, we never got to release that, so never mind us explaining all that stuff.
Well, here it is.
Here it is. I could definitely see that as a real possibility.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder what all exactly went on behind the scenes with the whole To the Stars Academy and stuff. Like, how did this happen so fast?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't even know. I know you kind of pointed to that as we've talked about this at different points. I'm sure that had an effect, but there was something else happening. I mean, with space, I really look at Space Force starting up. And that almost seems like it's prepping for a way to disclose information, but also distance themselves from it. Because it's this new branch. They can just say they got a hold of stuff. It's not, I don't know. I don't feel like the Pentagon's going to come out and directly admit, or the CIA is going to come out and directly admit whatever they've been doing.
Yeah, it's going to be like everything else. It's going to be like, oh, yeah, this is the one time it happened. Like, oops. I just mentioned To the Stars because they released the Nimitz video before the government. Yeah, so I don't know. It just something's up.
I mean, and a lot of people that have been involved with To the Stars have been high-level federal people at different branches of the military, CIA, Pentagon, stuff like that.
I almost wonder if this isn't like they are scared that these people will go all out and say everything, so maybe they worked out some kind of deal, like, and I'm not imputing anyone's motives, but I wonder if I could imagine something like they're worried all these high up people might come out, because they all sign non-disclosure agreements. So yeah. I wonder if they're like, okay, instead of telling everyone everything, because we will come down on you, let's work out like a settlement where we agree to tell XYZ, and then you guys can just go away, and you can be famous because you like blew the whistle, but like we're not telling everyone everything.
I could see that. That would make
That's
sense.
that's my conspiracy theory, and so I don't think we're gonna learn as much as we think we're gonna learn when they come out with the report. And
Probably
then I
not.
bet you don't hear a whole lot from To the Stars after this. That's my conspiracy theory.
Well, that's a prediction that we can definitely reflect on here in like a year.
Yep.
If we don't have like a alien co-host by that point.
Slash producer slash overlord.
They are very involved. Oh, but we're gonna stay kind of grounded this week. You'll see. This is something Freemasonry is something I'm sure you're aware of it. I think everybody kind of is to a certain extent. Um, it's like goes into the realm of secret societies and groups that have a lot of secrecy wrapped around them.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
And
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I think this is gonna be. Well, I know this is gonna be our first like multi-part topic where I'm gonna continue to come back to this for a little bit. I think I'm gonna go on a Freemason tear
Let's do a deep dive, man.
because there was just like this is one I actually like put together a whole show and then found something else within Freemason. And I'm like, oh well, we're gonna save that and I'm gonna use this now. And then there's like two or three other things that I could talk about as well. So I feel like I could probably talk about the Freemasons for a little bit. And with so much alien stuff getting disclosed, I don't know. I think I'm gonna veer towards secret societies and whatnot.
Let's do it.
So there are hundreds of conspiracy theories that have been described since the late 18th century involving the Freemasons. Usually, these theories fall into three distinct categories. They're either political, usually involving allegations of control of the government, particularly in the United States and the United Kingdom, conspiracies involving religion, usually involving allegations of anti Christian or satanic beliefs and practices, as well as cultural conspiracies, usually involving popular entertainment. Many conspiracy theories have connected the Freemasons and the Knights Templar, which are another group that we're probably going to talk about at some point just because they're interesting from a historical standpoint. They've been connected with worship of the devil. These ideas are based on different interpretations of doctrines of those organizations themselves. So
Okay.
that's kind of just a broad overview. There's stories in each one of those categories that I think I want to talk about at some point. Um, but before we get into what's going to end up being a lot of our episode, which is Albert Pike, who you might be aware of, I think what I'm going to talk about on this episode, though, not a lot of people are aware of. But before we get into all that, I kind of want to I'm going to let the Masons kind of have their say and give us a little bit of history as they like to tell people.
It's very fair and balanced of you.
So this is from the Masonic Service Association of North America, which is based in Maryland. This is what they have written on their website as the history of Freemasonry. No one knows with certainty how or when the Masonic fraternity was formed. A widely accepted theory among Masonic scholars is that it arose from the stonemasons guilds during the Middle Ages. The languages and symbols used in the fraternity's rituals come from this era. So it's believed and just that originally when this started, it was just stonemasons building things, and it was just kind of like unions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of got together, I'm assuming drank and talked about cutting rocks and forming them into stuff. You know how you do it.
You know how you do it.
So the oldest document that makes reference to Masons is the Regis poem printed about 1390 AD, which was a copy of an earlier work. So they go way back. And again, at that point, back then, it's likely just guys getting together that are all stonemasons. But then in 1717, 4 lodges in London formed the first Great Lodge of England, and records from that point on are pretty complete. So within 30 years of 1717, the fraternity had spread throughout Europe and the American colonies. Originally, it was just kind of in England and Scotland primarily. So 1700s, it blows up. They start taking off and starting fraternities all over the place.
Okay.
It became very popular in colonial America. George Washington was a Mason. Benjamin Franklin served as the head of the fraternity in Pennsylvania, as did Paul Revere and Joseph Warren in Massachusetts. Other well known Masons involved with the founding of America included John Hancock, John Sullivan, Baron Frederick von Steuben, Nathaniel Greene, and John Paul Jones. Another
Famous, the bassist for Led Zeppelin.
I mean, yeah.
That John Paul Jones.
Founding father, bassist for Led Zeppelin.
A duke or a baron.
And Baron Frederick von Steuben, who I'm not exactly sure who is. I recognize the name, but I don't remember who he was exactly. Another Mason, which is notable, was Chief Justice John Marshall, who shaped the Supreme Court into its present form. So the Freemasons were here at the ground floor of the construction of what we know as America on a government societal level. And we're in high positions of power. Which I didn't know. Were you aware of just how involved they were?
I didn't know it was. I didn't know. Like, I'm pretty sure. I mean, sometimes you hear like they were all Masons, so it wouldn't shock me if there was actually a lot more. I didn't know John Marshall though. That's a name that I didn't. He was the first Supreme Court.
Yep.
Yeah, Chief Justice. Yeah, I recognize most of these names. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess this doesn't surprise me. I knew a lot of them were Masons. I've heard throughout the years, about different things.
Well, a lot of the time it gets kind of brushed off as conspiracy theory, but it's fact. Like most of them wrote about it, and like there's records showing they were in these fraternities.
Oh yeah, no, I totally buy that. Yeah, no, this part doesn't shock me at all. Like I totally what I mean. Yeah, this part doesn't shock me, but
we're gonna get to some stuff that might shock you a little bit. Again, this is all just the Freemasons telling you about them. So that's on their website. They're admitting all those people. Like they're not shy about it. The founding fathers, a lot of them were Freemasons. We're proud of it.
They planned it up, man.
So over the centuries, Freemasonry has developed into a worldwide fraternity emphasizing personal study, self-improvement, social betterment via individual involvement in philanthropy. During the late 1700s, it was one of the organizations most responsible for spreading the ideals of enlightenment, the dignity of man, and the liberty of the individual, the right of all persons to worship as they choose, the formation of democratic governments, and the importance of public education. Masons supported the first public schools in both Europe and America. During the 1800s and early 1900s, Freemasonry grew dramatically. At that time, the government had provided no social safety net. The Masonic tradition of founding orphanages, homes for widows, and homes for the aged provided the only security many people knew.
They're
Today,
so kind.
I know, aren't they? Just over here helping people out all over the place. Just a great organization.
Wait a minute. Weren't they the government at this point in time? Didn't they just get finished saying they're like everyone who founded America?
Yes, they
all
did.
Right.
Say that. A paragraph up, Dennis. It's weird, right?
Yeah, all right.
Weird. They ran the government, set up the government, and then needed to save people because of the lack of safety nets set up by the government.
Well. What good guys.
So, today in North America, the Masonic fraternity continues this tradition by giving almost $1.5 million each day to causes that range from operating children's hospitals, providing treatment for childhood language disorders, treating eye diseases, funding medical research, contributing to local community services, and providing care to Masons and their families at Masonic homes.
What is a Masonic home?
I'm assuming that's like a retirement home.
I had no idea that existed.
providing care to Masons. I didn't dig into that one. I would assume that are like hospice sort of like situation. Like if you needed like long-term care of any kind,
It's just
they
like
take
this really creepy nurse standing over you and like a mask is like shushing you all the time not to tell your secrets.
probably. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. They are very secretive. They definitely don't want anybody talking about things they do and say. But so okay, so back to what they're saying, or I'm almost through what I have as far as from them. They close with saying the 4 million Masons worldwide continue to help men and women face the problems of the 21st century by building bridges of brotherhood and instilling in the hearts of men ideals for a better tomorrow. Sounds like a good group of guys, right?
Ideals for a better tomorrow.
Right.
Yes.
Whose ideals those are, we're gonna find out here in a little bit. Um, so as we get into this, I want to give you a quote from our sixth president of the United States, John Quincy Adams. Now, a lot of people don't know he wrote about the Freemasons in something called the Letters on Freemasonry in 1833. His father was what, the second president?
Yes, his father was the second.
Okay, so he would have therefore, I'm kind of connecting here. He would have known all these Freemasons that started the country.
His dad would have known him for sure.
Yes. So he wrote in Letters on Freemasonry, and this is a quote, "In conscience and sincerely, I believe that the Masonic order is, if not the greatest, one of the greatest moral and political evils that weighs on the whole Union."
Not an endorsement.
Oh,
Wow.
I didn't. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was not a positive quote.
Doesn't sound like a social club to me when the president's coming out and saying this is the most evil thing. Dude, slavery was still a thing back then.
Yes, but most of them thought that was kind of all right.
I'm pretty sure John Quincy Adams was not pro-slavery.
That I don't know.
I think he was passionately anti-slavery, is what it says on Wikipedia.
Okay. Then yeah.
So they were doing something that was pretty dark.
So he's like, this might not be worse than slavery, but it's really close, is what he's saying.
And it might be. Yeah.
It might be worse than slavery. Oh, so again, that's coming from the sixth president, probably about the time that he would have been in office, and as somebody who would have had direct contact with the first Masons known in North America. So off to a great start.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of those guys are probably still alive around this time. He probably knew a lot of Masons.
Apparently, they didn't open enough orphanages to outweigh whatever the greatest moral and political evils that John Adams saw.
That is a strong. Tell us how you really feel, JQ.
I know, right? So, I want to kind of move on to what is going to be a good chunk of what we're going to talk about, which is all kind of connected here. So now most experienced people with American history have certainly heard about the bloody deeds of Southern General Albert Pike. Unfortunately, few are aware of his fanatical obsession with satanic esotericism cultivated within the American Masonry, or of his desire for world domination.
Wow. That's
Yeah, I'm not burying the lead, although I have so much more to tell you about him. Like I wish like that was it. Like there's some pretty bad stuff.
Yeah, Tote's not bearing the lead here. World domination.
He is not a cool dude. So, most people aren't aware of this, though, because his exploits date back to a time when critically analyzing the activities of the so-called Freemasons was strictly forbidden or discredited from a historical point of view. since the most fervent followers of the secret societies of various ritual obediences had been strict about tracking what was said and written about them. Today, fortunately, there is an increasing number of scholars of history who are implementing a meticulous revisionism of the last 3 centuries, noting the fundamental and devastating roles played by Freemasonry in the revolutions and wars of Europe. It is easier to reread events of the past with transparency, decrypt the plots that have been harnessed countless areas of social life in repeated international connections that lead us to reconstruct the plans for the creation of occultist and elitist Masonic lodges aimed at the spreading of supremacist ideals of the New World Order.
Whew.
There's that world domination I was talking about. Like, he wants to bring about the one world government.
For real, though.
And yeah. So Albert Pike has been called the Pope of American Freemasonry and has gone down in history as well as for the sharing of Masonian ideals and also for his satanic veneration. He was born in 1809 in Boston. He became one of the most famous lawyers in the South. With almost superhuman intellectual faculties, he spoke and wrote 16 languages.
Dang.
Can you imagine being able to speak 16 languages coherently?
He's a smarty pants, man. That's nuts.
So super lawyer, super smart.
I wonder if you live all the way back then, though, like how you would even really know if you speak 16 languages. Well, I guess they have books. I was like, are you really going to run into people? But, this dude's super smart, super well connected.
Yeah,
I can see this guy trying to take over the world.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody's going to try, he's definitely got all the right stuff.
Yeah, he's got.
So, with his super smarts, he entered Freemasonry in 1850. And by 1859, Dennis, he had become the Grand Master of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, namely the supreme head of the American Freemasonry.
So he went from new recruit to the leader of all of North America Freemasonry in 9 years.
Yeah, or America. I'm sure there was stuff going on in Canada at this point, but for America, I shouldn't have said North America. For the Americas, though.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. He's an up-and-comer.
Yeah. So however many states there were back then, he's over all of them, all the lodges that have now spread out all over the country. So, Jury Lena wrote in his book, Architects of Deception, The Occult History of Freemasonry. And this is kind of who I got it from. There's a few different people that have done really deep dives and found. The thing is, and I'm not going to delve into it too much on this one. I have my other research. Some of the most incriminating evidence against the Freemasons, they wrote themselves.
Oh, that makes total sense.
You're going to find Albert Pike wrote a lot of it. But he wasn't all bad. He was actually a very aspiring poet, and he's known most famously for writing Dixie. If you're aware of that.
I did not know that.
But yes, he wrote that. So he's got a light side too, I guess, kind of. His poetry, that's where he squashes all the happiness out.
He writes a little ditty.
All the love, yeah. And then he goes back to hating everybody. So after the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, through his Masonic standing, Pike was among those who directed the insurrection of the South that led to the Civil War. Yeah, he helped start the Civil War, Dennis.
This is not shocking me so far. He wrote Dixie.
Oh, yeah,
I would expect the guy who wrote Dixie to start the Civil War.
He may have been born. He may have come up in Boston. He's Southern at heart, and like not the good kind of Southern.
Not the Southern comfort kind of Southern.
No.
There's something off going on here, kind of Southern.
Yes. It's racism. That's what it is. And being a fan of slavery, he was, yeah.
Well, this is exactly the type of guy you'd expect to either be like super egalitarian or like super master racy.
Yeah. Well, he's that second one.
Yeah.
He went for the latter. So a few years before starting or helping to start the Civil War, in 1854, one of his close collaborators, Judah Benjamin, formed the Knights of the Golden Circle. Which if you're not aware who they are, don't worry. We're going to come back to them later. Just know that his buddy and collaborator started that.
Sounds
And
ominous.
so when they started it, it was so their first operations could happen, which consisted of the paramilitary training of what we're going to call terrorists. I'm sure they didn't call them terrorists back then, but they were terrorists throughout Central America with the aim of provoking a war between the United States and Spain at the time,
Oh
who
wow.
ruled because Spain ruled the area. So, to note the curious coincidence that they acted in the South American countries a few years after the guerrilla actions carried out there by Italian Mason Giuseppe Garibaldi, um, who we could almost do a whole episode on Giuseppe Garibaldi. He's yeah.
So an Italian was trying to start a war between Spain and the United States.
Yes. Well, he'd kind of been down. He spent like 10 years just kind of starting stuff in Central America. He had different plots. There's theories and all kinds of stuff about what he did down there. Like he could be his own episode.
But he's just chilling, starting wars in places that have nothing to do with him.
Kind of. Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
you might maybe because they have some other plans that they're trying to veer everybody towards.
Yeah, this is my first clue that maybe this world domination thing actually isn't so crackpot. Because I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Well, so Garibaldi happened to be, like I said, in Central America in the 1850s, but specifically, it's known that he attended Masonic lodges in New York, specifically in 1850, which is around the time Pike was getting involved.
hmm.
And Pike, again, on a meteoric rise, you're going to find there may have been, there's not real hard proof, but things that Pike does later on, there's a high probability these two guys probably brushed shoulders at some point.
Okay.
So author Lena analyzes Pike's lightning military and Masonic career in detail and characterizes his inhuman cruelty as this. During the Civil War, Pike was a brigadier general of the Southern troops and commanded an army made up of Indians of 8 tribes. At his command, these troops committed massacres of such cruelty and ferocity that England even threatened to intervene for humanitarian reasons.
Wow.
Yeah, England in the 1860s was like, that's terrible. Like, are we gonna have to come over there and like start stuff again? Like,
They were
what?
like early on, and I went ahead and verified this. Early on, they were considering jumping in on the side of the South. And
Well,
some of their merchants and stuff actually were supporting the South. So whatever he was doing must have been pretty messed up.
yeah, to where England was like, oh, never. Maybe that's why they didn't get involved. They heard about Pike and they're like, oh,
Who's this
oh,
guy?
who's this guy? It got so bad that Southern President Jefferson Davis was forced to take action against Albert Pike and ordered him to disperse his Indian army.
Wow. He's like, I know we're all about buying and selling people, but we have our limits, man. Chill
You're a
out.
little cruel, man. You need to calm it down.
You
Send
need
those
to-
set. I mean, I'm sure it was viewed even worse because he was using Indians who were viewed as savages essentially, and he's got them like committing like horrible atrocities.
Yeah, this seems to be an MO with the Freemason people so far, is doing like terroristic acts.
Yeah, yeah, they're all about kind of trying to, turn their worm a little bit. So,
Do their what?
turn the worm, isn't that a saying?
Maybe. I'm uncultured. I didn't.
All right.
I never
Well,
heard it. Sorry.
maybe it's not. Maybe I just made that up. Thanks, Dennis.
Sorry. I apologize.
Well, now my feelings are hurt, and
And I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna start saying that. Turn the worm.
I might have said it wrong. It's something to that effect, though. Anyway, so he gets told to disperse his Indian army, but in the meantime, the general had made his triumphant entry into the Freemasons. Like he's become one. Like the war's going on. Like he's killing it. So, according to Dictionnaire de la Francmagonnerie, back home in South Carolina, Pike was chosen to become the top Mason in America as Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, like I said earlier, by Albert Gallatin Mackey, Secretary of the Supreme Council of Charleston, who had originally persuaded Pike to join the order. So the guy that got him into it got him, like, apparently he got in with like a really high ranking guy, or this guy got very high up in the meantime.
I see. It's good to know
So
people. Yeah.
during all this, word spread about this I mean, England found out about how terrible Albert Pike was. So it's no surprise President Abraham Lincoln also heard about him and declared him a rebel and a criminal menace and sought to capture and imprison the corrupt general. So when the war ended, Pike immediately fled to the safety of neighboring Canada and hung out.
Oh man, you better.
It's believed that while he was up in Canada, Pike may have actually been involved in the conspiracy and plot to murder Lincoln.
Ooh, how about that?
And I meant to verify, I don't know for sure if John Wilkes Booth was actually a Freemason. He was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, though.
So at most 1 degree of separation.
Yes, so
I
he's
wouldn't be
involved in
shocked
like
though. This seems to be like a
Pike's
southern
study.
thing.
Yes.
Freemasonry seems to be a southern thing, which really shocked me. Like I don't picture
Well,
that
it's
being.
it's not actually true though, because like I said, like there was conferences up in New York, and there's fraternities up in the north too.
I bet you, man. John Wilkes
And
Booth, famous actor. I bet they were at least either knew each other or he was only 1 degree separated.
yeah, and honestly, I mean, just looking into that connection and that whole story, that could probably be an episode on its own.
Yeah, for real.
Um, which maybe I'll get into this at some point. Okay. So after Lincoln dies or is murdered, he was murdered, assassinated.
Let's get this.
Pike returned, and for his heinous crimes and his massacres, he was found guilty of treason by a martial court and imprisoned. So Lincoln's dead. I guess he thinks he's just going to come back and be fine. Like he wants to get back to, leading the Masons in America.
Seems pretty cocky.
It does a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think I know where we're going next with this.
Until you realize that, so at this point, Andrew Johnson is president. Here's the thing. Andrew Johnson, also a Freemason.
Uh-huh, and Southern.
And Southern.
Southern Democrat. Oh, yeah, he killed the guy who made him a war criminal, and then he got pardoned by his subordinate.
Yes, because, yeah, you put it together there. Albert Pike's the head of the Masons in America. So if you're a Mason in America at this time, everybody is below Albert Pike,
He's your pope.
including the President of the United States.
Wow.
Andrew
Wow.
Johnson went so far as on April 22nd, 1866, he graciously praised him when he pardoned him. And
Oh, no.
the American press didn't talk about it for 9 months. Nobody reported on it.
Oh, heck no, you wouldn't, man. That's
Which,
some power right there, dude.
I don't know what that says about the media. Like, again, that could probably be its own spin-off thing in itself.
The media's always been dirty.
So Pike obtained this pardon in the 1860s, even though the previous year before he was given the pardon, there was further proof of his slavery and racist fanaticism. Turns out, in December of 1855, it came to light, after the victory of the Northern Union in the secessionist conflict, General Pike, together with General John J. Morgan and a small group of Southern officials in Pulaski, Tennessee, transformed the previously mentioned Knights of the Golden Circle into what we know today as the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, there we go. I thought there was something ominous about this group.
Yeah, they were the Ku Klux Klan. Same people that had started it, converted it, renamed it. It was a rebranding thing. They're changing their marketing. They're going more racist now.
Yeah, we're going all the way.
Originally, they were trying to start stuff in Central America, and that was their brand. Now they
Now they're
got a
like,
new
let's
brand.
be terrorists. I guess we can call them terrorists now, because I mean, the KKK is literally a terrorist organization.
They are a terrorist organization, and anybody that says otherwise is a sympathizer. Um, and just for fun, they came up with Ku Klux Klan because Ku Klux actually means circle in Greek.
I like how you said just for fun, like fun Snapple fact. The Ku Klux Klan. Oh, so it's the same name.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Wow. They rebranded, but those
yep.
stinkers.
They kept the circle in there. They like something about the circle, which actually I could explain it, but that I actually have a whole thing planned that we're going to talk about in the future of just their weird symbology and the layers of meaning they put within everything, and everything they decorate with, everything has meaning. And depending on how high ranking you are in the association, it'll have a different meaning because it'll get explained. Oh, that's what we tell the lower levels. Actually, it means this, and this is what that
Uh,
represents.
okay.
So that'll be something for a later episode, but we are going to cover that at some point. There's just so much of it. Like I tried to kind of mix it in here, and it would be its own thing. So back to Albert Pike, who was called the 19th century, sorry, devil. He was obsessed with the idea of world supremacy, and when he became a Mason of the 33rd degree, he also became head of the Illuminati of Arkansas. Again, that could be its own thing, just on its own, just that thing. And everything I looked at, all this is like, it's pretty agreed upon that's a thing. One, because when we talk about it later on, the Freemasons actually refer to the Illuminati as the Illuminati. Like it's not even a conspiracy group, like whether they exist. Like they're referenced by this group.
Is it like a subset?
Most people believe that's the case, but there's also some people that think that maybe the Illuminati infiltrated the Freemasons as they kind of grew and spread out, and that may be why they spread out in the 1700s.
Ah.
That because the Illuminati started off, and we're going to get into them at some point.
So Illuminati confirmed, man.
Yes, and that again, we're going to talk about them, but yeah, it's unclear whether they're an offshoot of the Masons or if they're their own thing and they kind of intermingled with the Masons. But Albert Pike has obviously bridged the gap, and he's the head of both.
Oh.
So he devised a plan to take control of the world through 3 world wars and other great revolutions, which we're going to get into what all that means and how he what he thought that was going to look like. So Pike, when he became the head of the Masons, 33rd Order, he went ahead and rewrote the 33rd degree rituals. So he came in, he's like, yeah, that's good. I'm going to go ahead and redo all of this now that I'm in charge and probably make it more racist if I had to guess.
This guy knows how to get stuff done, man.
We do know that these rituals on that high level still used today.
Oh, okay.
He also authored one of their most revealing works that has become public, Morals and Dogma. It's the authoritative book published by the Masonic Lodge, and it's quoted often by the lodge's leaders, and is actually some of the strongest evidence for secretive beliefs about the Masons. Like he comes out and says like this book could almost be in some like there's so many episodes within this episode.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
Um, but he explained, like I was talking about a lot of the symbolism and stuff, like he writes about it and what all this stuff means, and we're going to tell these people this, we're going to tell these people that. So in Morals and Dogma, the satanic nature of the lodge is meticulously laid out by Pike. He asserts that the lodge's rituals are based strictly on Judaism's occultic Kabbalah. He urges Masons to seek after the light and touts Lucifer as the angel of light to be followed and obeyed by Freemasons everywhere.
Oh, yikes. Is that what Kabbalah believes?
Yes.
Wow.
Again, I didn't dig into that too far.
No, but that's what he believes, though.
Yes, yeah. So he actually states in Morals and Dogma, quote, Lucifer, the light bearer, Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light with its splendor intolerable and blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not.
And this is public.
Yes. I believe it is at this point. It wasn't, I don't think it was originally. Like, wow. I think this was originally something that he was writing for the Masons.
Wow, okay.
But it came off of their printing presses. So this comes from them.
Oh, Albert.
And I mean, it's still, like I said, it's still in the lodges today. Like the leaders, obviously they probably don't quote this part. And who knows who exactly has access to it. But they still use his works today in the lodges.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing you have to get pretty high up to learn this, but yikes, man.
Probably. I don't know. Like I didn't get into as much. Like we're gonna dig into it later on, like because they wrote so much stuff, and it's not only Pike. There's a bunch of like high level Masons throughout the years that just divulge, like they just like to talk about it. I think.
Yeah.
So they wrote it, and after time, like stuff leaked out, people got a hold of it, and now we know all this stuff about them. And now they just kind of, again, like their website said, they hide behind all this generosity. What group spends $1.5 million a day on charitable things that isn't trying to cover something up? I'm not saying you can't be generous like that, but that's a weird, like, that's a very specific number you're touting.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then when you hear all this, it's like, yeah, maybe you're doing that because you want people to think you're all right, but really you're kind of evil. You are evil.
They are evil, yeah. Well, if they're following this stuff, then yeah.
Yes. Well, most of them, I don't think, know that they're following this stuff.
Well, yeah, but I just mean at the tippy top.
Oh, yeah, they know.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think this world domination thing has changed. And I mean, here's why. Okay,
this is like a proto Scientology.
Kind of, isn't it?
You got your weird, like messed up religion. You got your secrecy. You got your levels.
Yep.
I wonder if they didn't base Scientology off this. Even the Scientologists kind of wanted to conquer the world, didn't they?
Yeah, a little bit. They do like to spread out. But I mean, that's a common thing in all religions, I guess. So some of the most just hard evidence comes from secret correspondence between Scottish Rite Freemason Giuseppe Mazzini, which I don't know what it is. Every Mason from Italy in this story is all named Giuseppe. There's like 3 of them in this story. And they're all Freemasons. I don't know if that was like a thing. Like, I'm not saying every Giuseppe is a Freemason or that every Freemason is a Giuseppe, but it seems like a really high probability.
A lot of Giuseppes.
So he was a member of the International Revolutionary Committee of London, an organization placed under the direction of another high-ranking Mason, the British Secretary of State, Henry John Temple, 3rd Viscount of Palmerston.
Dang, okay. Wow, so Dang. Okay. All right. This is disheartening. I
So
don't
I'm
know.
just explaining who Pike's pen pal is right now and where he falls in the European world.
Man, imagine having all this connections and power and just using it for your weird. Uh, all right.
So, side little fun note about Henry John Temple. He linked his name to English imperial politics of the time, from the Opium War to the Sulphur Quarrel with the Bourbons, which gave rise to the enmity that justified the English financing of the expedition of the Thousand and the Unity of Italy, designed by the Masonian movements Giovanni Italia and Giovanni Europa. So just good stuff going on. This is who this Giuseppe Mazzini. He's connected to all those people.
Wait, is that him trying? Was he trying to? Was that the unification of Italy thing?
Yes.
There. Okay. So you got a British guy trying to unify Italy, and you got an Italian guy trying to start a war between Spain and the United States, and then you
No, this
got.
is different Giuseppe.
No, I'm just saying, in this whole circle they're running in.
Oh yeah.
And then you got an American guy who probably assassinated the president
Yeah.
and wants to dominate the world. Wow.
Well, they all want to dominate the world.
Right. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's really just right there.
Pike is just very vocal about wanting to dominate the world. He really wants it to happen. Name it and claim it.
Name it and claim it.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So these two letters, which are written between Mazzini and Pike, are of great importance. One of them was sent by Mazzini to Pike on January 22nd, 1870, and another was sent to Pike, or from Pike to Mazzini, dated August 15th, 1871. So Mazzini writes the initial letter, Pike responds. More historians agree that this correspondence is preserved in the secret archives of the Temple, the site of the Scottish Rite, or the Rite Scottish from Washington. So we believe it's in America, but it's like held up in their temple. They don't let anybody see it, obviously. But the letter from the Southern General, written in August of 1871, was one time exposed, and that was to the British Museum Library in London. And just so happens there was a Canadian naval officer, Commodore William Guy Carr, and he happened to see it, and not only see it, he had the wherewithal to take notes.
Mm.
And he actually published all this in a book he called Pawns in the Game. So, the Royal Canadian Navy officer or soldier was in fact a fervent Catholic scholar of secret societies and satanic occultism. So he's a fan.
Well, he's a scholar.
Yeah, no, he wants to know about him. Obviously, he's Catholic. He's a scholar. He's obviously probably not a fan.
Actually, Catholics are forbidden from being Freemasons.
Well, yeah, and we're gonna talk about. I mean, if you haven't already kind of put together just based on the Luciferian stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just mean like as a matter of like law, like Catholic law, like you can get kicked out for being a Freemason.
Well, I mean, that is a good call. I would assume if Christianity was more organized in a central capacity like that, they would also have that rule.
It's a good rule.
So the document seemed prophetic enough to advocate the quote crisis war revolution project, which devastated the 20th century. Here is an eloquent sentence written by Carr after reading the letter. The First World War had to be fought to allow the Illuminati to break down the power of the czars in Russia and transform this country into the fortress of atheistic communism. The difference raised by the Illuminati agents between the British Empire and the German Empire were used to foment this war. After the war ended, communism had to be built and used to destroy other governments and weaken religions.
So just so our listeners are clear, this is a letter written in 1871.
Yes.
And it
This is,
nailed World War I and the communist revolution in Russia, which did not happen until 40 plus years later.
yes.
So they were rocking and rolling.
Yeah, Pike is laying it out. And that's his response to what Mazzini wrote. So again, we don't have anybody that has confirmed like outside of there that has seen Mazzini's letter. But there is a scholar, Lady.
I'm gonna guess it wasn't so chill. If the response was yes, we will take over Russia and then the world, I'm gonna guess Mazzini's letter was like, "Hey man, you want to get together and like have some scones?"
Yeah, it probably wasn't how Mazzini's letter. That probably wasn't the tone. Probably was not a chill letter. So, according to Lady Queensborough, who was actually, that was a like pseudonym name. Her name was actually Edith Starr Miller, and she wrote that it was actually very disturbing. Quote: "This is what she talked about from the letter. We must create a superior right that will remain unknown, and to which those Masons of the highest degree that we will choose to belong. With regard to our brothers in Freemasonry, these men will have to commit themselves to the strictest secrecy. Through this supreme right, we will govern every Freemasonry, and it will become the only international center, the most powerful, because its direction will be unknown."
Ooh.
They're basically starting Hydra, is basically what they're doing.
Yeah, like legit.
So, noteworthy is kind of this Lady Queensborough herself. She was a conspiracy theorist. She's widely quoted, yet a little known figure. Her name is sometimes linked with the Order of the Golden Dawn and the British fascist movement. Her death in Paris on Sunday, January 16th, 1933, is sometimes described as suspicious. Neither the suspicions, nor links, nor her birth date appear to be documented, though.
That's odd.
Yes. There are a few clues in her book, Occult Theocracy, as to the author's life. Okay. So Occult Theocracy relies heavily on the published works of self-described 33rd Mason Domenico Margiotta. She dedicated the book to her uncle, Lloyd E. Warren, who first guided me in this work. Of her parents, all that is known is that her father, William Starr Miller, a socially prominent New York industrialist, commissioned the architects Carrere and Hastings to design his 6-story townhouse at the corner of 5th Avenue and 86th Street in 19. Also, she thanks Brigadier General R.B.D. Blakeney, a theosophist, a member of the Quest, and
Theosophist.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that would play into this.
Who and a member of the Quest and a communicant of the Liberal Catholic Church for supplying copies of a collection of letters and warrants that helped her produce the book. So, basically what I took away from when I heard all that, her dad's a prominent guy who had a 6-story house built at 5th Avenue in New York in 1914.
Does this like, set off any alarm bells? We don't know like when this person was born.
Nope. Well, we believe somewhere in the I believe what I read was like 1860s, 1870s, probably.
I guess records just weren't as good back then, but wow.
Or maybe a little bit later, 1870, 1880. But yeah. So that's where we get a lot of, and I think we'll get into more of what she did at some point. She actually had a real thing against the Mormons as well, and delved into them pretty hard at one point.
Man, she was just after all the cults.
Basically, yeah. She did not like cults.
That'd be kind of a fun life to like study cults and like also try to take them down.
I mean,
I guess we're kind of doing that a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, they're more powerful now than when she was doing it.
That's true. I guess she didn't do the best job.
Well, she died mysteriously, so we can hope
And all her birth and death records were apparently destroyed.
again. Yeah, like
I find that very odd that somebody that's that prominent, you don't know when they were born or died or how.
well, I mean, think
I mean, your
about
dad was rich enough to build a building that's still there in Manhattan, and you've written a book, and we have no idea.
well, if Scientologists are able to infiltrate the IRS in the 1970s, and take records about them out, I mean, is it really that hard to believe that in the 1920s, 1930s or whatever, that somebody was able to kind of make her disappear?
Disappeared her, man.
Like there's not very many pictures of her even available. There's one of her and her child, which I didn't delve into that. Again, we could probably spin off on just talking about her for a bit. But I just kind of wanted to give you an idea because to kind of, I guess, add credibility to her claims, because obviously nobody can say they've directly seen that first letter.
Right.
But she had all these well-connected people who you can assume, especially thinking of Brigadier General or whatever that, what was it? Yeah, Brigadier General, for helping her. Like she might have known some people that knew some people in the Masons, or somebody that defected, or somebody that wanted to spread what they were doing. It seems like she was connected though.
Yes,
And
obviously.
and based on the second letter, it didn't seem that surprising that that's what she said about the first letter, really.
No, no, not at all.
So Pike, according to the reconstruction made by Commodore Carr in his book, answers to Mazzini in August of 1871, announcing that at the end of the world wars, he hypothesized three: those who aspire to the world government will cause devastation never seen before. Quote, we will unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we will provoke a formidable social cataclysm that will clearly show in all its horror to the nations the effects of absolute atheism, the origin of barbarism, and bloody subversion. Then
Okay,
everywhere, what?
go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
What?
I was to say, number one, have you taken your Prozac today, Albert?
I mean, he really gets to the point. He's writing some strong words for his Italian pen pal. So he goes on to say, then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against a world minority of revolutionaries, these destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned by Christianity, whose worshippers will from that moment be without orientation in their search for an ideal, no longer knowing where to direct their worship.
Oh man, that's. I was gonna ask earlier because you had mentioned three world wars, and then the guy who saw the letter only mentioned two. So I was wondering, like, when's the third world war? But that's like what you just described: people leaving
Yes.
Christianity, but then also the rise of Marxism, and then people just scared and not knowing where to turn. That is modern society to a T.
Yes.
And
I,
this was straight from him in 1871. Wow. Okay.
yes.
I mean,
It,
think about how bold that is. Like, there's zero communist countries on Earth. Everyone's a Christian, and you're like, give it 50 years or 100 years, and
well, when you have
churches are going to be empty, and you're going to have a bunch of Marxists in the streets. This dude, I mean, either this dude was a prophet, or like the Freemasons have like got to work.
and I think as we delve further and further into the Freemasons, you're going to lean towards that second one. I don't think he was prophetic. I mean, I think he was prophetic in that they decided the thing that they wanted to make happen, and they've been very determined to make it happen ever since.
Right.
And as time's gone on, they've just increased power and wealth and influence.
Uh,
And again, they're Satanists. Like they're delving, at least at the high levels, they're delving into some sort of witchcraft, something interacting satanically with spirits, I believe.
yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Based on what they believe, well, they're very ritualistic, and we're gonna get into that at some point. Like they do, like it's all about rituals and stuff. And I realize that's a big thing with fraternities and stuff like that, but these are very dark, and as you get higher up, like they're very into the occult. So It's believed, okay, so back to the quote. It's believed that precisely from these words and intentions was born that very secret lodge reserved for adepts of the occultism called Palladiism. To explain this concept, another book written by an author under another pseudonym, but no less documented, intervenes. Freemasons and the Secret Seven, the Occult Face of History is the name of the book, by Athenaeus. Palladism, defined by the Larousse Encyclopedia as, quote, cult of Satan Lucifer, that is to say, of Satan, considered as the angel of light, the human and beneficial God, was a secret society within, unknown to the Masons, even of high degree.
It's the tippy top. He's the beneficial god, Satan.
Yes.
Okay, the angel of light.
So,
yeah, so there's Satan worshippers. Gotcha.
They prefer to recruit from the Kadash Knights, which is a 30th degree of the Scottish Rite, are the equivalent of the Egyptian Rite of Memphis Mizraim, which, yeah, did I mention there's an Egyptian sect to all this?
No.
Yes, there's a whole other sect, which again, they may get a spinoff show at some point too. The name accepted by the Palladian Rite was that of Re Turgitsi Automati, while the lodges were called Triangoli. The Palladian hierarchy had 3 degrees: the Palladic Kadosh, the Palladic Hierarch, and elected magician.
I like that last one.
Which I assume is the highest rank. I forgot to look to see which one was which, but based on the Kadosh Knights, being a 30th degree of the Scottish Rite, that's not the highest rite of the Scottish Rite. I'm assuming that's the lowest level of this.
Right.
So, Palladism was placed above the supreme councils formed by the exponents of the 33rd degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, and from these positions descended to lower grades by successive infiltration. The origin of the new and reformed Palladian Rite were Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini.
Oh, all right. So
they wrote letters back and forth, and then not too long after that, they both started this Palladism. So Mazzini in Europe and in Italy, and then Pike here in the U.S.
So they were working in concert.
Yes.
They had
so there was more than those 2 letters, I'm sure. And again, I'm kind of guessing at some point they probably met in person somehow through lodges.
Right.
But it may have all been done through letters across the ocean. But I'm assuming with you're plotting world domination, at some point somebody makes a trip, and you have a little sit down.
Yeah, or there's just a bigger network, and these 2 just happen to be the heads.
Yes, that's also probably true as well. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely Pike. Well, yeah, they're the heads of these organizations, are very high up, at least in Mazzini's case. They're obviously not doing all the legwork on this.
Right.
Like, they're orchestrating it. They're the masterminds behind it. So Paul Rosen, who wrote The Brethren of 3 Points in 1885, which was an expose revealing the dark nature of Freemasonry, his book focused on Albert Pike as the leader of all-American Masonry and his establishment of the Palladian Rite, with his connection in the Italian underworld to unify Masonry with the stems of fascism, which would come to power over the next 60 years, as we've kind of talked about already. The term satanic is not used but replaced with Luciferian. It is argued that there is a huge difference between satanic and Luciferian. Satanic being the adoration of Satan and the acceptance of the left-hand path. Luciferianism widely can be generalized as seeing the Old Testament Yahweh as a tyrant god who attempts to keep man ignorant of the knowledge of good and evil. So Lucifer, the light bearer, betrays Yahweh, bringing the light of wisdom to man through the eating of the forbidden fruit, liberating man from servitude to Yahweh's eagle.
Sounds very Gnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, how big of a difference is there between Satanism and Luciferianism? I guess we could do a show on it, but like, so you say, well, Satanism is accepting Satan in the left-hand path, and then you say, well, but Luciferianism is that you say Satan's the good guy, But once you think Satan's a good guy, what do you do about that? It seems that
Uh,
you would have to worship Satan,
you
right?
essentially, I mean, and you're going to find that's actually I mean, like back to his quote earlier, they're supposed to seek Lucifer.
Yeah, so I'm not sure there's really a difference.
I mean, when this was getting set up, or not, I mean, when Pike's taken over, and uh, if it wasn't already going in this direction, Pike really veered things in a hard direction. But it seems like if you got to this level and you're already really into Luciferianism, it was already going on in the Masons when you got in charge.
Right.
You may have kicked it up a notch, but you were on board already. He didn't get in power and just be like, you know what? I think Satan did all this for me. We're gonna do Satan now, you guys. I don't think that's how it happened.
We're gonna do Satan.
So, and actually, this interpretation with Yahweh being the bad guy and Lucifer liberating everybody, it's actually a reinterpretation of the Greek myth concerning Prometheus, who steals the fire of the gods and delivers it to mortal man. Like Prometheus, Lucifer is cast to the underworld, where he is to be punished for all eternity. Whether Rosen knew the difference between these two philosophical perceptions is limited, but it can be safe to estimate they were not ignorant of the differences, labeling them both as devil worship.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Power-hungry men.
yeah. In 1891, Leo Taxil, and he also went by a fake name. It seems like a lot of these people who were writing about the Freemasons were scared of the Freemasons and all wrote under fake names.
I wonder if that one lady didn't have a fake name, or was it? Well, I don't know.
Which one?
The lady who I find mysterious that we don't know anything about her.
Oh yeah, she did. I told you her real name.
Oh, okay.
Her real name was Edith Starr Miller. She went by Lady Queenborough.
I'm a dum-dum. My apologies.
No. I said it in passing. I didn't really focus too hard on it. But yeah, that was her fake name. So Leo Taxil's real name was Gabriel Jogon Pegas. And his partner, I guess he went by his real name, Adolphe Rissoux, claimed to have discovered a Palladian society. In 1892, French book, which interprets to the devil in the 19th century, written by Dr. Batali, who was actually, that was Gabriel Leo Tax. It was just he used two different names when he wrote. So that was Gabriel Jogon Pegas again. And he alleges that Palladists were Satanists based in Charleston, South Carolina, headed by American Freemason Albert Pike, and created by Italian liberal patriot and author Giuseppe Mazzini. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So they be Satanists, man.
And that's kind of, I think, where I want to just leave us. Because again, I don't feel the need to try and cram too much into this kind of intro episode into the Freemasons.
I think you did a good job of proving that their big Pope founder guy was a Satanist.
Which is kind of, I think, the main point I wanted to drive home. Because basically a lot of the stuff that we're going to go into past this in later episodes, it's all got Satanist, Luciferian, whatever you want to call it, elements to it. Like occult, like demonic worship stuff, symbolism. Really what they're into is Satan, and they're just trying to find ways to repackage it and kind of get everybody to kind of fall in. Like, basically, they say they accept everybody, but then you kind of can't really fully practice your religion within it. Like, specifically, they target Christians. Like, for example, you're not allowed to say the name of Jesus in a lodge. You can't pronounce him as Savior, none of that.
Yeah, we were discussing this. Yeah, because why is that?
Because they don't believe that he's the one true Savior. They believe he's just a prophet. The Bible is just a sacred book. All these things are on the same level as the Quran and Muhammad, and basically all religions. When you walk in the door, you have this new religion, really. The Eastern Star is another thing they call themselves. which is another reference to light and Lucifer, the morning
Yeah,
star.
the Morning
The
Star,
morning
right?
star, which is the Eastern Star. They just don't say morning star, they say Eastern Star.
Uh,
So you got only thing you have to believe is that there is a true living God, but not that there's a supreme being, which is necessarily God. In any of the religions, but there's no Holy Trinity in Christianity. They really zero in on Christianity a lot.
yeah, and we were discussing because my first question prior to this episode was like, well, do you mean like just that they accept people of all religions? But then it seemed like the more you looked into it, the more we talked, it was like, well, yeah, they quote unquote just accept people of all religions, but more or less you were explaining how you number one, you're not allowed to even say the name Jesus inside their lodge, and number two, it's like they kind of quote unquote accept the religions, but really they kind of just smush them all down and say, yeah, 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 they're all equal, they're
Yeah.
all the same, which is really like the first step to moving you on to something new. It's not tolerance per se, it's more like intolerance of every religion pretty much, other than whatever they're going to teach you.
Yes. And they do a lot of things that are very anti-Christian specifically, though, and very unbiblical. Like
Well,
for
if you think
example,
Jesus' dad was the evil god, that would make sense. Oh yeah, go ahead
yeah,
with
well,
your
yeah,
question.
that's a good point to make. Yeah, you're right. If you think that, and that's the other thing, like you don't want to admit all that, but you still are going, you're serving the you're still kind of believing there's a God because you're saying that the devil like took that knowledge and gave him to us. It's very confusing, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because on the
Right.
one hand, there's not this living God, and Jesus isn't part of it. They don't believe in the Trinity, which is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. A weird thing when you get initiated, because they do a lot of, like I was saying, anti-Christian stuff. You are what they call born again
Okie doke.
into the lodge, which they like have a ceremony where you're like in a coffin essentially,
Oh, yikes.
and this is you like starting your new life. So they
Oh,
basically kind of squash what Christians believe, which is that you are already in the light, whereas according to them, you walk into the lodge in darkness, and when you are reborn in the lodge, now you are in the light and seeking the light because of Lucifer.
right. Because of Lucifer,
They
the
just don't tell
light
you it's
bearer.
Lucifer yet. They're calling it the light bearer. They're calling it the Eastern Star. They're not calling him Satan yet or Lucifer. That's not till you get several levels up.
But they get there. Wow, man. When I see those guys in little hats, I never imagined the
Those are
dark secret.
Shriners.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I
I don't know if Shriners are.
know.
I don't know if they're involved with Masons or not.
Well, they're probably not this high level. I'm
Well, no,
guessing.
obviously not. They've got little hats. They got funny hats and little cars. Like, how important could they be in this thing? But, I mean, I think that's a good place to just kind of wind it down here. I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the weirdness there, and we're going to get into more of this in later episodes. But
well,
yeah,
good. Well, good job, man. That's oh wow. I mean, you've thoroughly convinced me something's going on.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, I always hear that it's a secret society and stuff, and I'm like, ah, no, it's probably just guys hanging out. But knowing this about I mean, I would say more or less he's their founder, even though they're from the ancient days. Like, if he was rewriting the rules
yeah.
and they're still using the rules today, I mean, and all those weird connections with the other Masons across the world. Why are they always trying to start wars? Ah, dude, this is gonna have me looking into Freemasons more.
Yep, it'll do that. This is not the first time I've gone down this rabbit hole with them. That's why it was kind of so hard to decide which thing I wanted to kind of bring in. I was actually very unaware of this Albert Pike stuff, or yeah, Albert Pike stuff. Um,
Well, yeah, and
I
like every other conspiracy we do when we talk about like Project Mockingbird or um, you know, MK Ultra and the government or these UFO studies, the government always says, "Oh yeah, we did that, but we stopped it a long time ago." Like my question with this is like, do the Freemasons acknowledge this? And if so, like what's their story? Like when would you if you had the power to like start wars and stuff, like when would you ever lose power?
I don't
Like
know.
when would this have ever stopped? You'd have to show, since this is history, you'd have to show historically, like when they stopped doing this evil stuff. And that's very concerning, because if the answer is they haven't, which, I mean, you'd have to show me they had a stopping point. Otherwise, why would I think they ever stopped?
And I didn't look for that specifically, but I haven't heard anything ever about like them kind of distancing, like they just don't acknowledge it, I don't think.
They just laugh it off.
Probably it gets brushed off as conspiracy theory.
Right.
But when you really delve into who their like founder was in America, like
it's not
really conspiracy. Like it's pretty decently documented that maybe not every detail, but like he was this guy, he was their leader. They still read his book today, which I think they'll admit, but I wonder if maybe, and I would lean towards, and as we get into the symbolism and stuff later, I would lean towards maybe the version that like low level people see is not the full version of it.
Yeah, either that or it's kind of like a lot of churches that don't really read the Bible, you know, it's like
you have your certain hymns or whatever that you read, and then that's it. Nobody ever bothers to read the rest of it.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem, as secretive as they are, that seems a little cavalier to just assume that nobody's ever going to sit down and read this thing cover to cover.
That's true. Man, yeah. Well, eventually we should interview a Mason.
I think we should.
He's going to curse us. He's going to give us the evil eye.
We should.
Or let's interview an ex-Mason. Like someone who got really high and then quit.
Yeah.
Because I don't want the lies. Because you're going to get the lies.
I would be interested. Well, I would actually be interested to just interview them briefly to hear from a current one to hear what the response is, not to give them a whole episode or anything, but
yeah, I'd be down with that.
To actually just straightforward ask them about some of this stuff. Like, this is pretty well documented stuff at this point. Like, what is your response to this?
You know what they'd say? I bet I know what they'd say.
What?
They would say, "Hey, you can read it, but there's a special way to understand it, and in order to get that explanation, you have to be a Mason."
Yep. I bet you just nailed it.
Yeah, that's what they would say.
We don't have the insight for it.
We don't have the insight. Yeah, that's what they would say.
So,
well, let's try anyway.
Do what?
Let's try anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to try. Well, how you feel, Dennis?
Really just more intrigued than anything. I'm really excited that this is like the first of many. Maybe I'll have to eventually do a multi-parter on something. There's a lot of episodes we said we do that on, but I'm really excited we're doing a deep dive on something. And we still have a young podcast, so I'm excited that we're branching out and going to get really deep into something.
Yeah, I felt like this is something that will be interesting to delve into, and it's something I really feel like people should be aware of. So we're going to do that. So thank you all so much for listening. Please share this if you enjoyed it. Again, there's going to be more of this stuff coming, so look out for that. Share it, like, rate, subscribe, leave a comment. Basically, do anything that you could think of that would help more people hear this. That's the biggest thing you can do for us, and we appreciate it. And, all the source information, crypticaccounts.com, sources tab. We'll be back next week with something else. Thank you all for listening. Bye.
Bye.